All right, welcome, people. Thank you. Welcome once again to the TY. Told you. Here at the TY, we always like to say that it's raw, relevant, and relatable. That being said, I just want to remind everyone who's watching, first of all, again, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak with you. But also remember, as of Saturday the 4th, early voting has ceased. Thank all of you that went out and actually participated. We really, really, truly appreciate it. Not for anything partisan, just for the fact that you are willing to participate in the franchise. Remember how important this is. For those of you who did not, like myself, I personally like to participate in full face. I never early vote because it is, to me, it is important that I show up out amongst the community and actually vote, cast my ballot then. So for those of you who did not, please, please, please remember how important it is that we participate in this franchise. People, remember, people have bled and died just so that we have the opportunity to do these things. With that, I just wanted to do this TY today to touch on some of the relevant topics. Remember, we said the TY is relatable. We want to do touch on some of the topics that kind of hit upon us as a community. And with that, I wanted to introduce my good friend, City Councilman for the City of Manassas, Brother Ralph Smith. Ralph, welcome.
Thank you, Roy. It's my pleasure to be here. Particularly whenever you want to talk about community work and involvement. As you know, my entire life has been involved in the community, and this critical time with voting,
yes.
It's that subject actually set the tone for my life. I know people get tired of hearing about how much blood was shed to get the right to the vote and so forth.
But they shouldn't be. That's critically important that we always do reference that. Not to cut you off, sir, but
no.
Just to remind people that indeed, just as we're seeing today, history in the making over in Israel and in Gaza, this kind of things, it is important, very important to realize where we came from and the advantages that we have. So yes, you're right. Go on, sir. Explain to them how this impacted your life.
Well, it was voting. The word "vote" is such just a small four-letter word, but just about everything stems from that.
Yes, sir.
I recall the incident that led me out into the community, as I put it, to become a public field worker. Happened before I was 10 years old.
Wow.
And conversation with my father, I would say, "Dad, how can they do that?" And he said, "Well, they're in charge." The obvious then was, "Dad, how did they get in charge?" Well, they were elected. So it boils down to how, and it was the vote. And the one thing, even then I could tell, was that we weren't allowed to vote because we weren't allowed to register.
Exactly.
And we weren't allowed to register because of people's attitudes and so forth. So at a young age, I set out to do that. And I don't say it for any accolades or anything. I say it out of pain. That the several beatings I took in trying to register the people vote, here we are 60 plus years later,
yes.
And there are still people trying to take away or minimize our right to vote, our access to voting and so forth. And so I say to people, it's absolutely critical that they get engaged, get involved, and ensure that everyone, as I was joking with you earlier, we need everyone to call Ma and them and Uncle Joe and them
Pookie,
and tell them
Junie,
that the voting is Tuesday.
Absolutely. That is so critically important that we remind. I mean, listen, when you guys go out there and you call Ma and them and they say, "Hey, that's all right, I early voted," thank them. If they say, "Oh, it doesn't matter because my vote don't count," they're going to do what they're going to do anyway. Yeah. Just remember, we is they. So please, that the attitude that your vote doesn't count, absolutely false. That's how, as you said just a moment ago, Brother Ross, they're in power.
Yeah,
how did they get there?
Absolutely, and that's the thing that's really troubling is Pastor made a point this morning when she said that things take a long time, but hearing one say that I'm not going to vote because my vote won't count, or I'm not going to vote because that Vincent, when he was elected, didn't do anything for me, right? The problem with if you don't vote, then you really are voting for Vincent's opponent. Right.
Exactly. It's the
So
very same thing,
you're
yes.
voting by not voting. So and you're hearing that now. We won't vote for certain people because of their age, or we won't vote for certain people because of their mentality. The problem is if you don't vote for what you believe and vote against what you don't believe in.
Exactly.
Then you're really not.
What is
You're
it?
making these beatings hurt more.
We hear it all the time in our regional settings. Silence is consent. Well, if you don't vote, that is silence, and indeed, that's giving consent to the other side that you may be against.
Yeah.
And so it is so vitally important. Well, with that, Brother Smith, some of the things that are truly troublesome as we move forward out into the community today when it comes to voting. As I said, folks, in case I didn't say it before, as a church, we are truly nonpartisan. We're not here to tell you who to vote for, Democrat, Republican, or Independent. All we're asking is that you do vote. However, with that vote, there are some things that actually affects us one-on-one. For example, reproductive health. That's pretty much on the ballot today, wouldn't you agree?
It is, right. The right to choose medical provider or make decisions, a woman's right to make decisions about her body, make decisions as to who will be her health provider,
Yes.
what type. It's very much on the ballot and very, very critical. And it's not the only right that may be on the horizon. As that right gets, quote, shifted away,
Yes.
then there's the dominoes started, if you will.
The slippery slope.
Yeah, and always another layer is added with the minority communities, particularly on the reproduction rights issue. There's injustice in terms of access to medical health anyway, and then
And we see this every day.
and whatever limitations that come out of this year's election on reproduction rights will have a unique impact on minorities because of our limited access or the difficult we have
Yes.
in getting access to multiple to medical treatment or an alternative, whatever the alternative might be or may not be. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so true. Thank you for that explanation, because I'm not sure if everybody really thinks about it in those types of settings, how important it is. Because, guys, let me tell you, women's rights are your rights. If it starts with, just like you said, if it starts with reproductive health care, it is a slippery slope. Another thing that I'd like to address or have you speak on is this real definitive push to cancel or to very much limit our ability to vote. We're seeing this across the country where they're doing everything and anything that they can come up with. It's pretty much short of a poll tax. They're really trying hard to have us not go out there and vote.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but there's still that urgency. Whatever drove people, those decision makers in the past, to do things like poll tax, or I had personal experience with trying to work around or get around the having to pass a test to register,
Yes.
and we ended up teaching people how to do that.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, they're just more. They're modern ways they're looking at new ways to, if you will, to restrict. There's still those who don't like the early voting, except now I think some of those who oppose see the benefit of it and they're more
now they're trying
supportive.
to-
But there are those who want to remove the box,
Yes.
the seal box, to the detriment of even to our veterans, not just only minorities.
Exactly.
It's because who can't be here to vote.
Many of our veterans don't.
need modification. Yeah, I'm not certain what's driving it. It's except that the fear of losing, quote,
Power.
control and never really fully embracing that the Constitution gave. We don't as a minority group, we don't need anyone to give us the right.
No,
The Constitution does that.
Exactly.
And the fear of what minorities can do or will do, I guess, is what's motivating those who don't want us to vote.
I guess that's that whole majority minority types thinking.
Right. Yeah.
You know, what was that? The Great Replacement Theory.
Yeah.
That they seem to purport. It's just so ridiculous.
It's very dismaying that that one issue, particularly the voting, access to voting, is still being challenged.
Yeah.
That's tough.
It is very tough. I mean, some of the things that we're seeing that will cause that to even impact us more. Access to voting, because of the power that these people hold, we're seeing things, repercussions in the Supreme Court, where we're seeing these ultra-conservative justices who are doing things that are just beyond the pale. I'm talking about people like Clarence Thomas, Judge Alito, where there's no stopgap, there's no wall to tell them, hey, you can't accept these gifts from these wealthy benefactors. Yeah. How do we change that? I mean, do we, as a nation, do we try to get to add more justices to the Supreme Court, or what's the answer?
That's another area that that particular one. I mean, specifically, I think they definitely do need to have some ethics and standards set
Absolutely.
up, some guidelines that, I mean, you and I have to follow them.
Yes.
Regular citizens, I don't think they should have any exceptions in that regard. But that's another example where we need, as a people, to have make sure our voice is heard.
Thank you.
That's the ballot box, but that's also being active, involved, engaging your representatives. We've learned even many organizations, almost every organization you're in, you realize the strength in numbers. I've gone to taken groups before to the school board meetings and to the council meetings because there was a particular item that we felt we needed in our community. And I can tell you the difference when I would stand up and speak and say what the group had told me compared to when I would start talking and I would look and say, in your honor, I have 30 people here with me who wants me to say this. So there's strength in numbers.
Yes.
And if just make your feelings known, let your representative know that you're bothered by, hey, there's no ethical standards for these people. Let's work on it. And even at our level, the local level, that bubbles up and moves, translates up.
Perfect segue, sir. Mr. Smith, I appreciate that. So we're going to go from the global, which is the Supreme Court, to the local. You made mention just now of the local school board elections. That's something else that I've been noticing. Just as a civilian, a citizen,
Right.
we're seeing now this push to take over the local elections by certain groups for power, i.e., the school boards. Could you talk a little bit about how important it is that we get out and vote during these local elections so that we can impact the reaction that we're seeing in the school boards?
Absolutely. When we start talking about education overall, and then there's always a subsection of how minority education and its impacted now, of course, by immigration and the need to there's some changes with understanding the language and how classes are taught and so forth. But this country and this state and
This community. Yes, sir.
Particularly our State Board of Education has an established history of not really fully supporting education across the board.
Absolutely.
Again, you know my story, where the State Board of Education supported non-funding of education in a county for 5 years.
Yes.
Non-funding of education for black students.
Yes.
They created vouchers for
Yes.
white kids.
Yeah, so they can go to the charter schools and.
That mentality, it's why I get chills when I even hear them talk about vouchers
Yes.
now. So it's very critical that we listen to what the school board members, their positions are on different areas. we need to insist on it. Yes, we're minority majority here in Prince William County. However, there are ways that policies can work around that, and the funding is shifted over to a voucher type program, or within the standard system, there's more emphasis on certain levels of education. In other words, it's comparable to years ago when minority students were kind of funneled over into an industrial art, or
the VOC Tech,
or they were prejudging that you're not going to college. So here's the track.
Yes.
Remember, I think D.C. had this big thing. No harm against you, Mayor Bowser, but but this track program they had was misleading. That concept is still potential, still possible. It's just another area that we really need. If you talk about all politics being local, it's with the schools, because there are swords out, if you will, that will attack our education. You see it more obvious, and it's no small deal. It's very obvious when you start talking about, well, we don't need to talk about that history. When you start taking away things like that and addressing, why is that portion of history no longer important? But you can't explain the other side, or won't explain the other side. So yes, it's just another effort, and another indication of why we must on Tuesday
get out there and vote.
It's 1 year. Actually, I think it's 1 year from today that the big election. So we.
That's true.
Yes. It's about November the 5th or something next year.
Yes, that's true. Well, Brother Smith, I really appreciate your time. There's so many more things that I would love to talk to you about.
We have to talk some more. Let me just add a couple of them. When you talk about issues, though, don't lose sight, people, of the injustice in terms of transportation and the injustice in terms of environment. Because all of those things, the issues and policies affect us in a way that it does not affect
food deserts. Those types of things.
If even development, we were off camera talking about data centers and so forth. Job creation. It's very critical that we as a people be involved in those policies making, because if the job that I can do is in Tyson's or away from Tyson, then I need to travel to work.
Absolutely.
And you have work here that you're not letting me be educated for. Then I need reasonable transportation. So there's injustice sometimes if you're forcing a people to go off to do just to live their life. So every issue that's on the table
is one that impacts
carries an added need for us to be vigilant and be aware of and give attention to. So these kind of conversations I'm very happy to have, and whatever I can to get people to start talking about it, accepting it, and making it a part of their life.
Brother Smith, folks, I'm going to actually put Brother Smith on the chopping block here, and I'm going to ask you that if we can commit to doing this at least once a month, perhaps, or once every 2 months, just to sit down and discuss what's going on. Maybe we can make this a segment so that
we can.
Just if your schedule permits, sir. I mean,
we can do it frequently.
Let's do that. Let's try to do that.
Anytime I'm available.
Right. It will be based on your schedule. But see, the thing is that I see just from this conversation.
It's hard. It's hard to say I'm not available on Sundays, because actually I do try to block out Sundays for church activities. So
that's understandable. But no, we'll work it out.
I enjoy it, and we can, because we do need to have these conversations.
Yes. And folks out there, any questions you may have, please, famechurch.com. You can put it in the chat. And anything that you think you might want to talk about that impacts us on a regular, please send that out to us. Again, my name is Roy Noel. I'm with TY Told You, and Brother Ralph Smith. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.